Okay, so we've got three amazing marketing chiefs, and we're really going to talk about, in a world where everyone's talking digital, we're going to talk about traditional advertising and see where that is going to go, and what is the role of things like TV, outdoor, print, events, and see if there's a way that these can coexist with where digital is going. And it's going to be an interesting discussion because everybody here has done something amazing with new media and old media, and they represent a sort of spectrum of what is possible and the potential that traditional advertising has. But I think let's question the word itself, traditional advertising. Yeah? I think everyone here has a point of view on that word, because have we labeled it? Has media labeled it as traditional when maybe it's not so traditional? So let's talk about it. Shubhranshu, you want to go first? Traditional advertising, what do you have to say to that label, traditional advertising? Where did that word come from?
So, Josy, my opinion is that the world has changed ever since we walked over onto the stage. You see, you never step into the same river twice. And I really don't know in terms of the timeline, when is the right date to say before this was traditional and after this is the new world. Yeah. I know that it's sort of fairly fashionable over the last decade or two to say that digital and digital-led advertising, social media marketing and so on are the new lot, and print and above the line and the traditional reach-based media are the older traditional media. I don't particularly cultivate any fancy for saying this is traditional and this is new. Even if life is changing very fast because traditional media is having some sort of a sunset, frankly, that is Josy's problem. It's not my problem, because as a marketer, I am interested in effectiveness. I'm interested in creating awareness for my brands, creating rich associations for them, cultivating some sort of a shared meaning. And if some other media or medium allows me to do that, I'm happy to invest in whatever gets the job done. Yeah. Having said that, we have to recognize that the world is changing faster, and I think the equation is drifting towards consumer sovereignty in terms of their ability to do things that they could not do earlier. It is a fact that in what is being called traditional media, the recipient was passive, and that equation has changed perhaps forever. As I was telling you, I read somewhere recently that an ordinary washing machine today has more computing power than NASA had in '69 when they sent a man to the moon. And this sort of a phone an ordinary smartphone has more computing power than the entire planet had in 1969. Now, if you imagine that with this kind of a change happening, we can do marketing the way we did it in 1969, that's obviously not going to happen. Yeah. We have to recognize that change, we have to embrace that change. But I don't believe that there is a dividing line, that before this was traditional and after this is modern. I think those lines are changing with every step we take. Yeah, that's great, because what you're saying is that effectiveness first, people and habit first, not media first. So that's, that's what you're saying. And I don't think there's a cliff, and that marketers who are invested in traditional media will fall off the cliff on the very next step. I think there is a long tail for every kind of media. We take great joy in killing everything. This is dead. TV is dead. Print is dead. And I guess the same kind of excitement would have gripped everybody when radio made its first appearance, when television made its first appearance, when cable made its first appearance, and then obviously with the internet. So I think that there is a need for all kinds of things in the mix. We have to keep seeing what's working better and invest there. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just now there was a book that was spoken about. It's a book, man. Is it traditional? I'm not sure, but Mr. Mariwala just said there's a book that he's going to sign. So I don't know if that's traditional or not. But there was a good point Ajay made when I spoke to him last evening. He said, maybe digital is also traditional.
Ajay, you want to talk about, not that point, but any other point? Because I thought that was interesting. Because digital's been around for so long, I think digital is traditional too.
Yeah. So, Josy, I'll just break the two terms, traditional and advertising. 31 years back, I first heard of a profession called advertising. 31 years back, in 1991, I first entered an advertising agency. And 31 years back, in 1991, I joined this industry called advertising. Since then, I have come to know that advertising is seen as a definition for mass media. Then I heard there is direct marketing, then I heard there's public relations, then we heard there's digital marketing more recently, and therefore there are many, many streams by which we can describe our industry. My personal view is that we are the people who do branding for the world. We're doing great disservice by branding ourselves as advertising. Whether we mean only mass media, as we did 31 years ago, or whether we mean advertising as the industry we represent. Because very often, I think there is no terminology, there's no branding that we have created for ourselves to describe this entire industry. At Ogilvy, many years back, they used to call it 360-degree brand stewardship. Josy, you remember that? So even if you call it brand stewardship, I understand all the facets of this industry. But if you yet call it advertising, you're undervaluing yourself. The second is the term traditional, and I was just Googling and looking at what is the opposite of traditional. It's unconventional. So does that mean advertising is conventional and anything other than advertising is unconventional? I again think it's a branding challenge which this industry has not recognized or addressed. We do it for everyone, not for ourselves. And the last thing I wanted to tell you is about 18 years back, I switched to this side of the table, which is the client side, which the three of us represent. Now, when you ask me from the side of a marketer and his perspective, none of this matters. You call it traditional, you call it unconventional, you call it advertising, public relations. I want marketing solutions to business problems. I use the term number of customers, I use the term revenue, I use the term profits. What is the term you use? And if you start using terms like advertising, conventional, unconventional, traditional, not traditional, digital marketing, you are never going to be up the value chain, and that old conversation, Josy, will continue.
Yeah.
You treat me as monkeys and you give me peanuts.
Yeah.
Because if you sell yourself as a monkey, you will get peanuts. And I think this industry represents so much more than how we position ourselves.
So that's what we're hearing is that the labeling is coming in the way. We are not looking at our own nomenclatures. We're using traditional words and therefore becoming traditional, when actually what's going on is a lot more. And what clients and marketers need is an understanding that is based on what do you bring to the table. If you keep saying advertising, then there's less and less of that they want to be engaged with. So that's a great point. What do you say, Rahul? Rahul is running Jeep. He's the marketing chief of Jeep. They believe in adventure. So what is traditional advertising for somebody who believes in adventure?
Right. So traditional something by definition is something that's not changed for years, right? And as a marketer, I don't think there is any channel or any medium that is reaching out to the mass media has not changed. Everything has evolved. The newspapers that we used to read 20 years back are not the same newspapers that we read today. Things have changed, editorial has changed, the paper quality, the kind of, the writing style, everything has changed. The news, the way we used to watch news on Doordarshan is not the news that we watch today. So everything is evolved. So there is nothing called as traditional marketing, right? As you rightly said, Jeep as a brand believes in adventure. And a larger part of our marketing is one-on-one, where we talk to our customers, right? Now, this is also a traditional way of talking to customers one-on-one, but obviously it has a modern touch, the way we do it. So, yeah, so there's nothing traditional or non-traditional marketing, because everything that is evolving, right from print, TV, out of home has gone digital now. So everything is evolving, and there's nothing traditional about any medium that we as marketers use.
Yeah, that's an important point. But one of the things you mentioned while we were chatting was word of mouth. Now, word of mouth, is that traditional or is that modern? And is that the basis of all advertising, whether it's modern, traditional, whatever? You want to talk about word of mouth?
Yeah. So word of mouth has been there for ages.
Yeah.
Whenever you're buying something which is high value, be it a house or car or something, you'll always go and take your friends and family's opinion, right? So that's been traditional, whether if you want to call it so. But what is forming the opinion of that reference or that referral when a friend or a family is referring or telling you that, okay, you can buy this product, is coming from the new age marketing, right?
Yeah.
So where is the information going to the customers? That is more important, right?
Yeah.
And whether we term that as traditional or non-traditional is that what we are here to discuss. And what I believe, it's my point of view, is that there is nothing traditional about when marketers plan their communication. It's more about customer-centric approach rather than, oh, this is a traditional medium and this is a modern medium.
Yeah. You want to say something? Ajay?
So, Josy, when you talked about word of mouth, it just made me think of something. Very often, we as professionals are called as storytellers. And that is a reasonable and a nice way of describing what we do, because we tell stories about our products, about our categories, about our brand to very many people. And I think storytelling depends on who you're telling the story to, and then decide how you're telling the story. Story can be told by a medium, which could be digital. It could be told by a medium called print or TV. It could be told across the table. It could be experiential. It could be through drama. It could be through film. So I think it's more important for us to describe what role do we play in the life of a brand, marketer and consumer, and then describe and tell our story to the world as against traditional, unconventional advertising, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So, Shubhranshu, you want to add anything or you want me to?
No, not particularly on the word of mouth piece, because in my opinion, word of mouth means that you have risen through and ascended to the level where people find you interesting enough to tell others about you. And so I think that's in many ways, from a marketing and brand building effort, that's sort of the tip of the iceberg. But it is a consequence of everything else that you are doing. I don't think people generally do word of mouth, certainly not word of relevant mouth for things which are not interesting, which are not central to their lives. And the other problem that generally advertising agencies and marketers in general have is that we tend to obsess a lot about our job profiles, the work that we are doing. We are looking at everything we do under a microscope. Oh, that purple should have been bleeding in better here. Oh, that logo can be bigger. And consumers, on the other hand, are looking at us and our work through a telescope. So, the geezer is not working at home. He has an EMI to pay. His boss is being miserable. So, in that whole universe, there is some advertising that's also coming his or her way. So, I think that, the word of mouth piece, if it's happening effectively, then, congratulations. That means you've done a lot of right things to be able to get there. But I don't think word of mouth could be, a means to getting your desired objectives in marketing terms without doing a host of other things. You have to build engaging content. You have to tell interesting stories. You have to be, hitched on to some interesting ideas. Some of those will go into a ditch. Some of them will fly. But you have to keep experimenting, and directionally you have to be, headed right. If you do all of those things, if you are engaging, if you put the right hooks in, if people find information that is relevant to them, and don't underestimate, particularly on word of mouth. I am in the automotive business as well. How is your service doing? What is your spare parts availability? Do people find the sales process easy? Does the vehicle perform the way that they had expected to? Is the total cost of ownership trending in the direction that they had imagined? All of these things will also go into informing and building the word of mouth. Yeah. So it's not only about advertising. We confuse marketing and advertising so often because it's the grooviest part. Certainly it's the most interesting, most engaging, creatively the most liberating part. But you have to think of all the P's. So I worry about whether my word of mouth is going to happen because I'm effective Is it going to, word of mouth could happen even when you're a disaster, right? But then people are telling each other, don't go there. That's not a great brand. So if it's positive word of mouth and it's an enabler to growing your business, then that means you've done a lot of things right. And that's good to have.
So that's good. We've covered a point here, but we'll go forward and I want to talk about radio. Radio is the oldest medium and yet it is the youngest medium. How did that happen? Yeah, when you look at radio, you don't think of it as the oldest medium. And yet the rise of radio, the rise of hyper-local radio, the rise of RJs who connect with every individual in the smallest town, or the rise of podcast, which is another innovation from radio. It tells us that there is no concept of what is traditional, right? I mean, it's what you do with the medium. And what radio has done beautifully with the medium is made it super relevant. And we love radio, right? So like that, is there any understanding of how media, which is seen as traditional, has managed to keep itself super young? You know, is there anything like that
I think media, I don't think media has age. I mean, a medium doesn't have biological age, certainly. It may have, age in terms of how long it's been around. I think consumers and the group of consumers and, that collective has an age. So if India is getting younger, we live in a country where, 400 million people are less than 20 years of age. It's an incredibly young country. Lifestyles are going digital. Your phone has everything you need. So naturally, a lot of that behavior, the way in which they engage with brands, how they do their due diligence, how they compare one with the other will also shift digitally. Now, the interesting thing for a medium to do, say print or radio, as you mentioned, is if they can innovate such that they link to other media as well.
Yeah.
So if I can collect people at one place, get them to post a lot of content on their social media pages, then I can direct them to do something else. If that conversion is happening at a healthy rate across media, I get more return for my investment as well. So I think if your age group in terms of the general population is going down, or if they're adopting new media habits, you are well advised to, even in traditional media, try and put a link there. If you can link it to what's happening.
So I want to build on that point because about a couple of years ago, Burger King did this print campaign. On the front page, they invited McDonald's to come and create a burger with them. And they called it the Mac Burger, Mac Whopper, because Whopper is a Burger King brand and Mac is a McDonald's brand. So the Mac Whopper. And they invited them on World Peace Day. They said, let's make peace. And so let's create this hybrid burger. And then they put it out as an invitation on the front page. And the way that social media and other mediums got involved, suddenly it was not a print ad, right? It was live. And it was this virtual prank that got all mediums involved. So suddenly that which felt like a press ad or a print medium got all mediums involved. And I think that's building on what you said, right? It's the nature of the idea, where suddenly nobody's seeing it as a print ad. They're seeing it as an invitation,
Advertising is one thing in the toolbox, as Ajay was also mentioning. You see, if Kodak today did very contemporary digital advertising, would they be able to revive the brand and the business? Yeah. Versus, let's say, an Apple, which is indisputably the most precious brand and thriving business in the world, they are heavily invested in what we are presuming to call traditional. They are on outdoor hoardings, they are in print. So it's not because it's a bleeding edge brand doesn't mean that their choices in media have to be, oh, I can't go print, or oh, I can't put myself up on a hoarding. So I think these new does not necessarily mean better. Traditional does not necessarily mean that it has had a sunset or it's something backward. Yeah. We have to make that distinction depending on what you need.
Yeah. Ajay, Rahul?
Just to add to that, you mentioned about radio, right? And when we're talking about traditional and modern, I mean, just for the definition sake of it, anything that is not evolving will die down. And Kodak is the right example, right? Kodak is the right example. So radio definitely has evolved, right? The podcast and then hyperlocal. The RJs are talking about the local issues, modern music, and so on and so forth. Similarly, print as a medium has evolved because there was an ad Volkswagen did where there was a talking newspaper, where there was a chip in the newspaper, and when you opened the newspaper started talking to you. It conveyed the message of the new launch. So that was an innovation. That was not done before. Nowadays, print ad also come with a scan code where you scan and you go to the website. So innovation is the answer, and you cannot really term something as traditional and okay, this may or may not work, because the traditional media is working and it's evolving as we see it every day, be it out of home, radio or print, right? So definitely that's the way to go right now. So evolution is something that has to be from the client side, as from the brand side, as well as from the channel side. Anything which is stagnant will be called traditional and probably will die down. And I don't think any of the mediums are dying down as of now.
That's well put. I mean, if you're stagnant, you're stagnant. If digital is stagnant, it's traditional. If it's moving forward, it's new. So that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah, Ajay, you want to say
Josy,
something?
I stay with the point of how do you want to brand yourself?
Yeah.
So you were talking about radio. Let me take that example. I don't think radio has survived, right? The use of radio has made it survive. Conventionally, possibly, people heard the radio at home. Traditionally, possibly, it was heard by the housewives in the afternoon. Traditionally, it was used and consumed in a particular way. Today, there's a car, people are on the road, they can hear the radio while on the move. Today, I can have the radio in my palm and I can hear it on the move. So the users have changed.
Yeah.
The usage has changed. If the medium's usage did not evolve, the medium would have died.
Yeah.
And therefore, I come back to my point and saying is, if you ask me to meet somebody new in this audience and I'll introduce myself and saying, I'm a marketeer, I doubt if any of us will say I'm a marketeer of an automobile brand. I'm a marketeer of a finance. Our visiting cards don't carry that. Why do our visiting cards the other side around carry, whether it's by introduction of handshake or a card, I'm in advertising. The minute you say advertising, I'm again saying you're restricting yourself.
Yeah.
And tomorrow you may say, I am TV advertising, I'm print advertising, I'm traditional advertising. One, it's not true. Two, you're killing your own branding and you're reducing the value of all that you can and do represent.
Yeah. In fact, my official designation is Chief Creative Officer, but I call myself Chief Creative Midwife. It's a way of looking at yourself differently. Maybe your job is to deliver ideas. So that's what, yeah. So just about this point about innovation, is there any other ideas that you'll have seen where you feel it has broken the medium? That it's no longer the traditional notion of outdoor or print or radio or TV. You know, like for example, when I worked with CNN IBN and we launched it in 2005, they introduced citizen journalism, which is fantastic because suddenly it became two-way. Television was never two-way. And for the first time, TV became two-way, and with the use of your mobile SMS, you could report events. And I thought that was a breakthrough in television sort of work. But any points like that?
To build on what you just said and what Ajay was saying earlier, I think media, media in general has done a much better job in crossing the hurdles and innovating than say advertising may have done from a traditional standpoint.
Got it.
You know, if today, if you're an OTT provider, you're still building stories, you're still making content. It's left to the consumer whether they want to binge and burn or they want to subscribe and churn. That it doesn't matter. It's screen agnostic. The core remains the same. That you have to build interesting stories or bring content to people, and it's relevant. You have to have the eyeballs, you have to have a rate card on top of it and make your money. So I think media has done a much better job at evolving and marching in step with the change in technology, etc., than, let's say, traditional marketing services may have done. And I think Ajay's advice is well meant, that if you define yourself in traditionalist ways, then you'll be very worried about whether traditional is now gone, and are we looking at it in the rear view mirror? The other piece about how to, in a sense, become contemporary, I think the dictionary meaning doesn't matter. What pays the bills, if it's going to get you a return, if it's going to grow your consumer base, if it's going to get you more effective, more profitable, inevitably it will take root, whether it is publicized in creative award events or not. One of the problems is the moment some new media happens, the gush of celebration is much bigger than the reality. Everybody makes a video, 30,000 people participated, 15,000 this thing happened, and then some award or the other is given. And then 2 years down the line, you realize that thing never took off beyond the green shoots. So I think it is responsibility of everybody in the room to give it that gestation period, let it live 3, 5, 10 years. When I was a management student at IIFT, Dr. Prakash Tandon was the chairman. He also was the first Indian chairman of Hindustan Lever. And in my final year, he was writing a book, and he took the help of a few students to give more examples. And we were obviously giving most contemporary examples. And everything in his book was from the 1960s. So I asked him innocently one day, sir, how is it that everything in the book, this was in the year 99, is 65, 66, 67? He said, I don't think you can prove the case unless it's been around for 2 to 3 decades at minimum. 2, 3 years, 3 or 4 years doesn't prove the case. So I think we have to be more patient in tagging things as tradition and saying now it needs to innovate. If it's doing a good job for you, as a marketer, I have no problem in using it, even if it's been around since we invented the wheel, frankly. It doesn't matter.
You want to add anything, Ajay?
Yeah, I think, Josy, the conversation starter, the minute it starts from a medium, for example, we're talking about advertising, I think we failed. My understanding is the conversation has to start with who do you want to talk to? What is the idea you have to connect with that person or people? And then how can you best do it?
Yeah.
The medium is the least of the starting point. It's possibly the last, because the idea has to be the largest, relevant to the consumer has to be ensured, and then whichever medium works.
So you're saying the message is the medium, not the medium is the message. So just on that, if you were to end this session, and what I'm hearing is that there is no such thing as traditional advertising. Neither is it traditional nor is it advertising, and both have to be questioned. Yeah, because we've created these labels. And also the fact that when what is seen as traditional medium combines itself and hybridizes itself and morphs itself with other mediums, there's a sense of freshness and new things happen. So these collisions between media is really where the magic lies. And that's what we're hearing from some of the examples. So if we were to throw away this term, advertising or traditional advertising, what is the new term that you could come up with? Say in 2 or 3 or 4 words. That is not, we don't use the word traditional advertising anymore. Let's create a new term. What is that term? I just want you all guys to give it a shot.
Since this is the drift of the discussion, I would say it would be effective brand building platforms.
Effective brand building platforms. You heard that, guys? Effective, it's patent. It's a patent, right? Effective brand building platform. Okay, thank you.
I would say the brands and the channels both have to innovate and evolve. And I would call this marketing as customer-centric marketing rather than
customer-centric.
Customer-centric.
Focus
on the customer. That's
customer-centric marketing. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
According to me, one word has to be there, which is brand.
Yeah.
And the second has to be connect, by whichever way you call it.
Right. Fabulous. I would just call it, the 3 words would be Ajay, Shubhranshu, and Rahul. Why can't we have words like that? Why do we need words that have branded meaning? But anyway, thank you guys. Thank you for a wonderful
Thank you, Josy.
Sharing. Yeah, and thank you for listening.